Stand by for I Remember Radio.
I want to tell you about Texas radio and the Big Beat. It was a warm summer night with our song playing on the radio.
Hi, this is Dick Lyons with I Remember Radio, and we have a very special guest today, Chris Roberts. How you doing, Chris?
Dick, you look fantastic. It seems like yesterday when I called up KGBS and you were on the air and I said, how in the world do I get into this business?
I remember you calling me while I was on the air, asking me, how do I get into radio?
And you took it from there. And if it wasn't for you helping me with Al Anthony out in San Bernardino, I don't think I would have ever done it.
Where were you, in college or were you in high school at the time?
Cal Poly Pomona. And I had a show on at Cal Poly Pomona, the old KCPK. We had a wire hanger that was our antenna out of the dorms. And that's kind of where it all started. But gosh, you and I have some great memories together.
We do. I remember you calling me from the KWOW Radio Ranch in Pomona.
Oh, yeah, that was one of the stops.
You got a hold of me and, okay, now what do I do? I want to go to KFXM, and how do I get there?
I wanted to work at KFXM, and if you hadn't have stopped by and on your way to Palm Springs, I think I remember, you chatted with Al Anthony and said, hey, I got this guy that wants to work here in San Bernardino, and I want you to listen to his tape, and et cetera. And that really opened the door for me, and I've never forgot it, and I always appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Never forgot you either. In fact, you're one of my only mentees. I can't remember anybody else that assisted, and you were just made to be on radio. You really are a natural talent.
Oh, that's nice of you to say that. I learned so much from you. And when I went to work for Al Anthony, I learned so much from him that I used it all the way through the rest of my career. A lot of the tips and everything that he had about doing the right thing and being as professional as possible. It was absolutely invaluable.
What is it about Al and the culture that he created at KFXM that really made it so successful with big competition and great disc jockeys across the street at KMEN 129?
He wanted to be the best. And I'll never forget walking into his office one time and he says, hey, what's that new song you're playing on the air? And I can't even remember what it was, but it was, I said, Al, it's a future hit. He says, listen, when in doubt, grab an oldie. And I never forgot that because it was already a hit song. And that was his theory. Hey, grab one from the library. You have the ability to do so and play a hit song.
That was sort of the key to my success there too. I knew what the hits were.
Yeah.
And I knew what I liked. I wasn't the music director like you though.
I died and went to heaven, Dick, when I found out I was the music director because I didn't realize the position that I was in at 21 years old with all of these record promoters coming out and romancing us as a breakout market in San Bernardino. And it was a beautiful ride.
It was. And I heard your last podcast and I thought, wow, he really did have a good time there. Tell me what you picked up from Al as far as being on the air. And do you remember any of the rules of what we had to do other than play a lot of hits and the Tiger Roar at the ID?
Well, you know, he would put together a prize package of cash, prizes, trips. And the number one thing that I never forgot in any broadcasting of the future, we might only have $100 we were giving away. But we had a couple of trade out trips, trade out restaurants, trade at a store, and he would total it up and he'd say thousands of dollars in prizes and cash available. And he was just the number one guy for promoting the station and making it sound bigger than life. And the great signal that we had just added to all of his promotions and the way that he wanted you to attack the microphone on the air to be successful. And I never forgot it.
Me too. I worked for a lot of great radio stations before and after.
Yeah.
And I never had that feeling of being almost like a ringmaster in the circus, along with the live tiger mascot, of course. And just, it was a party on the air, and it was really well done. And we had such a close contact with the audience through those big glass windows with a double microphone and speakers.
Oh boy, what a great studio. He was a program director that had been on the air. He was very successful when he was on radio and television, and had his own dance show when he was a disc jockey. So he was able to relate to exactly what you and I were doing when we were on the air. I never had another program director like that. He was the best one. I know he's the general manager, he was really the boss. But in reality, he was the program director, because he put together the format and we just followed it. And it was rock and roll in the early 70s for me, for you, part of the 60s. And it was just the best.
Tell me about your path on your career, going from school to your first radio station and then onward into sports, because I know when you called me the first time and I met you over the phone and heard this enthusiastic young guy that was really articulate. I got a lot of phone calls in those days, but you were special. Tell me about your path and how you got to be what you wanted to be, which is a sportscaster.
Well, from Cal Poly Pomona, being on the air, you were the one that encouraged me. Hey, put together a tape, start making some phone calls. You're not going to start off in LA. You got to go out and work in the desert and the outlying areas. Great advice, because there's so many people, and you know, and you've met them, and we've seen them come and go, that wanted to get into broadcasting. And they thought they were going to just step right in at an LA station, whether it's radio or television, and be a star. And that's not the way it is. You had to get out of town. And I've always recommended that, just like you told me, you have to go out to the boonies.
Got to circle the market.
Get some experience. My first job, I had put together a tape at your suggestion of producing a air check that was really a production tape of the best stuff that you could really say in a 3-minute period. And you said, hey, put together a 3-minute tape. That's all you need. In, out, commercial, maybe the weather, etc. And when you go meet whoever is in charge, then that's when you sell them, get them to listen to that tape. And once they meet you, you've got an opportunity to get on the air. And that's what I did. I went to work for a gentleman by the name of Vic Moriarty at KCIN in Victorville. It was a daytime station playing country music. I didn't care what we were playing. I just wanted to be on the air, working professionally. And that first job, I learned more in 1 week, and really just phenomenal compared to college radio.
So tell me about your next step up. How did you get to KWOW, the Radio Ranch? 1600, or what was the frequency?
Yeah, 1600. What's ironic is the first station was 1590.
You're moving up.
Yeah. Well, I made a stop in Indio at KREO. And I know you probably remember those call letters. There are a few of our friends that work there, and I had a chance to go on the air there and play rock and roll. I had been trying to move in, closer to LA with every step. And I had talked to Dean Wickstrom, who is the owner. He told me, he says, well, you know what? I like you. I know you're at KREO. When we have an opening, I'll call you. And I thought, oh, yeah, sure. He'll call me. My gosh, Dean was a man of his word, called me. I worked the all-night show, midnight to 6.
I remember you called me after midnight one night.
At KWOW in Pomona.
Yeah.
And that was the stop there. And probably when I called you, it was, I had an opportunity, or I wanted to work in San Bernardino. And I knew that you had worked at KFXM because we talked about it all the time. And you said, you know what? I'm headed to Palm Springs this weekend. I'm going to stop by and leave a note for Al Anthony, the boss at KFXM. And that was the door that opened, because, you know, he got a lot of tapes and saw a lot of people, a lot of resumes.
Everybody wanted to work there.
Everybody wanted to work there. Great mid-market. And when you told him, hey, listen, I've got this guy that would love to work at KFXM, you opened the door. He listened to my tape, put me on the weekends in the beginning. And then all of a sudden, there was a change in the midday. And he says, we're going to put you on in the middle of the day, Monday through Friday. Saturday, you do a 6-hour show, but you're going to go middays. And I thought, Dick, at the time, from all-night show, KWOW in Pomona, playing country music, to top 40 radio, rock and roll with all the hits in 1970, I thought, this is the best. It doesn't get any better than that. And he says, by the way, he says, do you have any experience as a music director? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do, because I was a music director at KCIN in Victorville when we played country music. And I was there short time. But that's how the door opened to do middays for him, plus become the music director.
Great. Well, you're a talent, and I knew you were, and I knew about your persistence and your enthusiasm. And that's what I told Al. I didn't just tell him I had a guy, I wanted him to hear a tape. I told him how great you were and what a personality you had, and that you were a good guy. And he liked that. That was what he was looking for. Even though we were a little wild and crazy on the air, we were good employees. I mean, I was there in a different era almost a few years later, but I think I recommended somebody that he really, really liked and still does.
Well, and the thing that was so sweet about it, Dick, was that I can still remember when the first rating book came out. I didn't know what ratings were. Arbitron, Pulse, whatever. I didn't have a clue, but Al knew what they were worth, because you got to sell it if you got any kind of listenership. And I got a 24 share, the first rating book when I first got there. And he came into the control room and he says, kid, let me tell you what you just have done. Blah, blah, blah. You got a 24. You got to build on that. Let's keep it going. And he was just proud as punch. I didn't quite get it at the time, but as the years went along, because I worked there for 3 years for him, we're always in a battle with K-Men, which was the other rock and roll station. Yeah, and they had some good people there. But while I was there, if they had a 14, we had a 28. If they had a 10, we had a 20. Whatever they had, we doubled it. And so I didn't know what it was like not to be with a winning station right from the beginning until I went to Los Angeles.
Well, what was your next stop? Straight to Los Angeles?
Well, thank goodness the general manager over at K-Men wanted to get me out of town because I was successful with ratings. Plus, I hosted the concerts at the Swing Auditorium. I had a television show on teleprompter, Channel 3, I think it was, on UHF in San Bernardino. And he knew that he was trying to disable that KFXM daddy that Al had put together. And he recommended me for a job in LA at Cute 102. And Arnie Shore was the GM then. He actually ran KGFJ on the AM, and Cute 102 was going to be his FM station. And we were out of Glendale, and we played albums, but we played a lot of hit music too. We eventually turned into Disco Los Angeles, which was just huge at the time. And we became a #1 station during the disco era. But I worked for Arnie Shore for about 7 years before they changed format and new people came in. But from Cute 102, I went back to San Bernardino, got hired as the program director at 99.1.
KGGI?
KGGI, great station. And
Big signal, too.
your old buddy Don Davis was the man that hired me.
Oh, really? I know Don.
Good, I know, we both do. And good old Don Davis hired me. I worked out there for about 6 months. But Johnny Kay, my old buddy, had just become the assistant program director at KFI in Los Angeles. And I went back to LA and worked on KFI and then worked for him on Coast 103. And that was the next stop in the broadcast era. And thank goodness for Johnny as the boss. He's the one that actually kind of helped me really forge that sportscasting transition.
Tell me the story of how he did that.
During this entire time in San Bernardino, when I was on TV, we were doing a CIF game of the week, play-by-play in football, basketball, baseball. We even did a golf tournament. We did a track meet. And I got some phenomenal experience on camera, interviewing people and broadcasting with a picture, not just on radio. But I did sports there. When I went to KFI, I was, and Coast 103, I was doing play-by-play for Riverside City College. Then I did Cal State Fullerton for 1 year. And then I got the Long Beach State job, football and basketball and baseball. And I did that for 10 years.
Wow, that was a side job, though, from the KFI Coast,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And thank goodness Johnny put me on the air doing sports in the morning with Loman and Barkley on KFI.
Fantastic.
Well, talk about instant credibility when you're on with Al and Roger. They were about as big as you get at that time. And then on the FM, I was on with Mark and Kim. The real credibility in making the transition from being a disc jockey to a sportscaster was I was doing play-by-play sports the entire time. But when I got the on-air morning shift job with Al and Roger, and then on the FM, Coast 103, which is right across the hallway with Mark and Kim, that kind of made my credibility really stick as a sportscaster in LA. And parlaying that, when I went to KMPC, and they were the flagship station of the Rams, the Angels, UCLA, and I was doing sports updates on KMPC. And John Riebenstorff, I don't know if you recognize the name or not, but he had done play-by-play sports. We were very good friends. Worked at UCLA, and unfortunately he passed. He died. He had a heart condition for many years, and he passed away about 3 weeks before the beginning of the football season in 1992. Because in 92 I was at KMPC, and Bill Ward, who was the general manager at the time at KMPC, says, "Well, you've been wanting this job for 3 or 4 years," because I'd send him tapes.
Forever he wanted that job.
I sent him tapes. He says, "I'll tell you what, we're going to be getting a lot of tapes, a lot of resumes, but the job is yours. It's my call. Now, what we have to do is you have to go over to UCLA, make friends with the basketball coach, Jim Herrick, buddy up to Terry Donahue, the winningest coach of all time in the Pac-10, Pac-12. And you have to get to know the athletic director, Pete Dallas, and then Mark Dellins was in charge of radio and TV. So as you know, it's not just one person usually that hires you in those newer jobs. So I did it. I went over there, made friends with them, and they always used to say, well, it's Bill Ward's station. We'll go along with whatever he wants to do. So I got a chance to do football, and it was like on a trial basis during the season. And midway through the football season, they said, we're going to keep you on and have you do basketball. And 23 years later, after being the voice of the UCLA Bruins, it was something that I treasure forever. The 46 years that I was in broadcasting, 43 in LA, and the last 23 years at UCLA.
Well, if I can say this, I'm very proud of you. Somebody, can I say I discovered you?
You did. And you helped me. I mean, I don't know how much of a discovery it was, because you were the one that was always prodding me, keep hustling, keep working, keep putting those tapes out, go see people, knock on the door, make those phone calls. And it paid off.
You weren't distracted by what you didn't want or what noise was happening. You were so super focused on becoming a sportscaster that you did it, and you did it in spades with all four sports. Isn't that amazing? Do most colleges have one color or play-by-play guy do all four sports?
Well, actually, it was football and basketball. We did some baseball.
Okay.
That was the main.
That's three.
Yeah, at UCLA. But a lot of guys do both football and basketball. And some of them work in the National Football League too on the side, along with the college play-by-play. I did the Rams for 1 year, also along with UCLA in '93 when Bob Starr was very ill. And I thought those Saturdays and Sundays of doing a Saturday college game and a Sunday NFL game almost killed me.
I bet.
I'm glad he got well, but I was very proud to sit in for him and call the Ram games.
What a great experience. The story from you starting out, calling me from college, to you finishing off being a superstar. That's really amazing.
I don't know about superstar. It's just I was working broadcaster, and I was always proud to have a job. And I worked with some really good people. You started it off for me. I remember when I first called you, you were playing Martha Reeves and the Vandellas and Dancing in the Street. And I usually remind you about that because it just brings back so many memories every time I hear that song of getting together with you.
Well, it's been a fantastic experience working with you in the past and talking to you. So let's talk about Bill Bellman. Would you like to talk about Bill?
I'd love to talk about Bill. Bill, talk about learning the business from a sales standpoint. I learned right away at KFXM in San Bernardino from Bill of where the bread was buttered, and it comes in from sales. You better take care of the client.
Part of what I told you when I referred you to Al was talk to Bill Bellman. Bill was a sweet guy. We were like his sons. I think he had a beautiful daughter, but we were just like his boys.
You know what he did for me, Dick?
What?
Because at 21, 22, 23, you're young, and I was aggressive and maybe a little brash and a little too over the top at times. And Concert Associates, remember them?
Absolutely.
They used to call me and recommend what groups should come to the Swing Auditorium in San Bernardino. And I would help them. You know, they'd say, hey, what about Fleetwood Mac? Oh, yeah, definitely. What about this? What about such and such? And they paid me at that time $150 to do their commercial. And if I wanted to MC the concert, if I wanted to. but it was $150. And at that time, we did production for free. It was like, you go in and you cut a spot and do it, and you'd be glad that you're still working. There was another small time promoter that came to town and wanted me to cut his commercials. And he says, I'll be glad to pay you $25. And I got up on my high horse. $25? Are you kidding me? Concert Associates pays me $150. I got together with Bill Bowman later, and he says, Chris, let me tell you something. You take the big with the small. You add them up, put it in your pocket, and count your blessings. So don't ever get on your high horse again if somebody's not paying you what you think they should, because take that extra money and be glad you got it. I never forgot that either.
That's a good one, because he used to just tell me, get the money. That's all he had to say. Just get the money.
Yeah, I believe
and
it.
Nobody stiffed him, man. He cashed in advance or whatever he had to do if he didn't have credit. But he was a great salesperson, and I learned a lot about sales from him.
Yes.
So he also used to be a disc jockey. He was Bill the Bellman on KREL, or one of the stations in San Bernardino back in the day. And then before that, I think he was Polka Willie. He had a polka show.
Oh, wow.
So he was a former DJ too. Yeah. I don't remember hearing it. He just told me about it.
Yeah.
So he was a key person there. What other salespeople were there when you were on the air?
Well, Al Barnett.
Okay, well, he's a story.
Good guy, turned into a good friend. John Barton.
Right.
Was there, and I learned the hard way from John Barton about always, when you cut a commercial and you put it on the cartridge that's going to the control room, play it back and listen to it.
Yes.
As I cut a commercial for Chevrolet and put it on tape, and then inadvertently he had a Ford dealership, LJ Snow Ford, I think it was, and I put that commercial over the top of the Chevy commercial. They're running both at the same time. And he went through the ceiling. He said, what in the world do you think you're doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I learned from it, though. Don't ever take anything for granted. I said, John, it will never happen again. And I never, ever put anything into a control room or sent out a tape or whatever it was by not listening to it first. And so that was that learning curve.
Yes, that's a great story. How about Helen Jones? Was she there when you were there?
I knew Helen. She had already left, and I think we might have been at another gathering at her house when she was living out in the Inland Empire. Beautiful house on a lake. But she was a terrific salesperson. The people behind the scenes that make the money come into the program. And I really learned a lot like you did from them. It's like, hey, listen, kids, take care of the clients because they're paying your salary. And they were right.
That's right. That's a great lesson. And I don't remember working with salespeople as a disc jockey as closely as I did with the KFXM sales crew. Those 4 people brought in the big share of money that was really the bread and butter for the radio station. And Bob Bonnell was he was supposed to be the general manager, but he was like, I guess, general manager in title, but he was sort of the sales manager too. So Al was the boss.
I think you're right. They were like co-GMs, but Bob was more focused on sales, and Al, not that he didn't get involved in sales too, was really into the programming.
So working for Tullis and Hearn, they had Kathy in Bakersfield.
Yeah.
They had KFXM and KDUO in San Bernardino, the Inland Empire. And then they had KDO in San Diego. So I always wanted to be on the air in San Diego, but I never achieved that, and thought maybe I could slide in there from KFXM, as it's a bigger market,
I always wanted to work in San Diego too, but I'm glad I went right to LA just like you did.
Me too. So I had the opportunity to meet Howard Tullis a couple times
Sure.
and had some experiences with him. Did you ever get a chance to meet Howard?
I was so bold, Dick, in those days
You were?
that I actually would go into the office when Howard was at the station. He would sit at Al's desk, and of course, you know, he's
That's
the
right.
owner. And I would walk in, and he would say, "Roberts, what are you doing?" I said, "Howard, I want to be successful like you've been successful. What in the world do I need to do?" And he would say to me, "What are we paying you right now?" I said, you know, 600, 700 a month.
That's what I was making, 650.
Something like that. He says, "What do you take home every 2 weeks?" And I said, something like 275, 280. How much can you save out of that 275 or 280? I said, "Well, I think I can save 100. He says, "Do you think you can save 100 and a quarter?"
Whoa.
Well, I don't know if I could save 100 and a quarter. I think I can save 100 and a quarter. He goes, "Can you squeeze it to 150? So in other words, the bottom line that he was telling this young guy who wanted to try and be as successful as possible money-wise, save your money, kid. Don't spend it all that you earn in one time. Save it. It'll build up." And even Al, I can remember he joined in one of those conversations one time. He says, "Once you get a couple of hundred going, then you'll have the four figures. It'll be 1,000. You just keep doing it." And by God, they were both right.
I think you followed their advice. Didn't you buy some income property?
I'm still a real estate broker. And
Good for you.
listen, real estate has been good to me, just like broadcasting. But I learned in the beginning that you had to save, you had to be thrifty. Don't be so spend-wise worthy that you don't have any cash after you get paid, and try to do your best to pinch in those pennies. And boy, Howard was right, and so was Al and Bill Bellman.
And Bill Bellman. They were good teachers. I don't remember ever being in another radio station, and I was at a few where I got that kind of advice. They were sort of like house fathers of a fraternity house. I mean, they were really teachers.
I've said it before, those memories with, for me, KFXM are as big as this UCLA national championship in 1995 that I broadcast. Those 3 years at KFXM, invaluable. I learned so much from Al Anthony and his tutorship. I've even said in my last year on the air, after 23 years at UCLA, I was still doing things that Al had taught me, promoting different venues that would come up that I had to be the spokesman for at UCLA. And I never forgot them, and they were just something that was filed in the back of my cerebellum, and it came forward when I needed it.
Well, two things. You're a great student. You took the advice that was given to you and ran with it in spades. And I'm wondering, did you ever have interface with Coach John Wooden?
Absolutely. Of the 23 years that I was at UCLA, I used to go over to his apartment in the
Really?
San Fernando Valley.
Yes.
I'd had lunch with him. I did numerous interviews, and the greatest coach of all time, 10 national championships. And not only was he a great coach, but he was an even better human being. I treasure those relationships and that one with him specifically.
What a great teacher. Yeah, he was the pyramid to success. Did you ever get a copy of that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's so true. His values, number one, were the top of the chart before you do anything else. And worry about what you can do, Don't worry about your opponent. And he was so right. He told me an interesting story, which I thought was fabulous.
Oh, please pass it along.
The first national championship that he won at UCLA was in the early 60s, and he had Walt Hazzard was the big star on
Big
the
star.
team. And we talked about recruiting, and he said, Chris, I got to be honest with you. After that first national championship and Walt Hazzard, the star on my team from Philadelphia, says, I never really had to recruit. They came to me and wanted to play for me, which I believe because they came from all over the country. Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar came from New York, on and on. You can just name the different players from around the country that came to UCLA and got him to not only coach them to national championships, but he turned them into great human beings too. Just a phenomenal man.
Isn't it interesting, the juxtaposition between Al Anthony and Coach Wooden? Even though it's completely different genre,
Yeah.
these are people that had that ability to really give you a teachable moment that you never forget. And you carried it through your career, and you're like a sponge. You just soak up that information. I'm very proud of you. I get sort of goosebumps thinking about our past, which I haven't thought about in a long time. So now that I'm 75 years old, and I was at KFXM in my early 20s and in LA at 23, I think, and getting back in touch with you and hearing about your life and experiences, I just put together the Al Anthony experience and the Coach John Wooden experience.
Yeah.
I think Al would probably be thrilled to hear that.
Al is the best that there was. He's probably the best boss that I ever had.
Me too. We could do no wrong, practically. I mean, he got mad at me when I was late or something.
Oh, and me too. Sure.
Yeah, but he knew how to handle us, and I think we felt confident enough.
Yeah.
He knew he'd never fire us because he loved us so much. Chris, what are some of the funniest memories that you've had in your radio career?
Well, one that goes back to San Bernardino is when Johnny Kay and I were up late at night. Vic Moreno was on the air working weekends. Later went to CBS, became a big engineer, great guy, good friend of ours. But I pretended like I was Howard Tullis when I called in on the request line. And I told him, I was talking in this kind of voice, like Howard does. I said I want him to change his name to Vic Schmick on the air. And he did it. Johnny and I were rolling in his apartment laughing because we thought it was so funny. And then we told him to flip over one of the records and play the backside to it. It was American Patrol. And to hear American Patrol on a top 40 station was laughable. I said it was my favorite song, being Howard. Unbelievable. We finally called him back later and said, Vic, change your name back to Vic Moreno. We like that best anyway. We thought we'd better clean it up or he'd be using Vic Schmick forever. That takes the cake as far as comedy is concerned.
Working with Loman and Barkley, how about your experiences there? They're super talents.
You know what? It was amazing to sit in the studio with them, do sports for them, and then kind of hang out with them after I would do sports. Because here were two grown men. I was probably in my early 30s when I worked with them at KFI. These guys are in their 50s, closing on 60, acting like young kids, laughing at each other and cracking me up. And I just couldn't fathom the fact that here are guys that are, grown men who've been doing this forever. And they were number one at the time.
They were huge. I listened to them.
And to see them pull the different voices, and because both of them use different voices, like, "Hi, this is Benny the sailor. What do you think?" And Al would answer to him, and Roger would do the same thing. And I would be rolling in the studio laughing at these guys and just amazed at the age they were. They were still so funny. And they both treated me like a prince, especially after I got the UCLA job. Roger used to bring up full dinners to the press box at the Rose Bowl. We couldn't eat them because we're on the air. Prime rib, baked potato,
Oh, cool.
mashed potatoes.
Wow.
Just unbelievable how much fun they were. I traveled with Al Lohman to the Winter Olympics in 1988 in Calgary, Canada. And it was just a special time to be with him on the road.
Yes, and at the Olympics.
And at the Olympic Games. He was just special. Both of them, Roger and Al, they were fantastic. But those years at KFI, so precious. And that what was really amazing, we had a couple of program directors at KFI. And this is before Johnny, or after Johnny started the interim program directorship before he went over to Coast and programmed Coast with love songs on the Coast. And there were a couple of program directors that were just really not very good. Kind of shaky, to be honest. I'm not going to name who they are.
Don't.
But Al and Roger would make fun of them on the air and use different voices like, "Well, you know what our program director tried to do today," and blah, blah, blah. And they would just laugh and make fun of management. And they never got in trouble. But of course, when you're as successful as them, you could do just about whatever you wanted. I can still remember when somebody called in one day and said, "Hey, they've reported that you two guys are making some phenomenal amount of money, $500,000 a year, blah, blah, blah. Is that true?" And Roger on the air says, "No, that's way off, way off. No. We make more than that." And just, they were never at a loss for a one-liner and all the different characters they portrayed on the air.
Do you remember the soap opera that they did every day?
Absolutely. Yes, that was a classic. Light of My Life. That was the classic soap opera that Al Lohman and Roger Barkley put together on their morning show. And the thing that was even more amazing about the Light of My Life show, they would just start it and they would just take off. And one guy would play off the other and vice versa. And pretty soon they were cracking each other up using different voices, but they never wrote anything down. It was all ad lib and funnier than ever. And people couldn't wait for the next segment.
I was just going to say that. You took the words out of my mouth. I couldn't wait till the next day. And I had my commute timed exactly so I could listen to that portion of their program.
And the older they got, the better they got. And I was blown away by these guys. When you're 30, you think somebody that's in their late 50s, headed on 60 is ancient. Now we think it's young. But I was blown away by their talent and their ability to be comical characters. And they really were, and they were the best at it.
Did you do afternoon sports too? Did you do a split shift or just the morning?
I did on KFI, I did afternoon.
Who was on at the time?
I think Gary Owens was on in the morning in the beginning, and then Steve LeBeau later in the afternoons on KFI.
How about Likas? Was he there?
Tom was there later. And in fact, the sports show that I had, which was a talk show on KFI when it changed format to talk, I would follow Tom Likas. And I came home one time, and I told my wife, Ann, who I met in San Bernardino.
Really?
Yes, great memories. But I told her, I said, you know what? Tom Likas and Rush Limbaugh, who also was on the station at the time, I said, they're actually very similar.
Yes.
She goes, no, there's no way. I said, no, they are. One's left, one's right, but they're going on the air for one reason, to get ratings and listeners and entertainment. And I finally got Tom Likas the last time we were together to admit the fact that, yeah, they're good friends.
Oh, really?
They're buddies. And their whole shtick was left and right. And I used to just crack up at Tom Likas when he would have these phone calls of women that would call in and be angry with him because he would say, yeah, I tried to get my girlfriend to do this or that. And you know what? She can take a hike. She can, what in the world does she think she's messing with? I'm the best. And, Tom, by listening to him, if you never saw him, you would think, well, he must look like George Clooney, or he must be because he would describe himself as the best looking guy. No, he doesn't look like George Clooney. And nothing against Tom, but he loved to pull that off, that he was holier than thou with the ladies and drive the women just berserk.
I found him very interesting because he was different, as were all the great jocks, Loman and Barkley, Emperor Bob Hudson, Bill Balance, Dr. Tony Grant, Laura Schlesinger, and Vince Scully. Who else?
Yeah. I said you're mentioning all classics. They're the best.
Yeah. Ross Porter and Vince Scully and Chick Hearn.
Oh, yeah.
These are immortals, they're
immortals.
So fantastic. They just had such a great following. And you followed in their footsteps.
Well, I was very fortunate and blessed to have worked in the same city as those great
well, that's right. The big market.
Great people that you talked about, because just being able to rub elbows with Chick Hearn and Vin Scully, and Vinny is still alive. It's just unbelievable how grateful I am that I was able to be on the air with these same people.
You were on the air with Vin Scully?
Well, during his time. I mean,
okay, got it.
But when he was on KLAC, I happened to also be on KLAC doing UCLA games.
That's
and
right.
I would love to plug the fact that, hey, listen, if you tune in and you hear Vin and Ross and etc. on the air, tune it up to 11:50. You catch UCLA there. We'll be there doing the play-by-play. But I would always plug the fact that we were teaming up with the Dodgers. I was very proud of that.
I am proud of it too, because you really did a great job. And I used to plug Emperor Hudson. I was doing afternoons. He was on mornings.
See, that's the stuff that we learned from Al.
That's right.
The cross promotion, and don't be afraid to give your pals that are on the air with you a little plug to help people go to them if you're not going to be on the air.
We were never competitive in-house. We all got along. I don't remember having any crosswords with any of them. There were ones that were crazier than I was, and there were ones that weren't as crazy as I was. But we all just got along. It was a great team. Yeah. And we felt it, in that Tiger Mag. I don't know if you ever.
Oh, yeah.
When you were there, it was there with all our pictures on the back, not just one disc jockey a week. And the stories we wrote in it, and you probably did the music. So you did the back cover, and it's just a great experience to relive with you, even though we were there at different times. We have all that cross relationship of our history.
Memories live forever.
Thank you for being on the air. And that's what this show, I Remember Radio, is all about. Thank you for sharing your memories And I'd say now you know the rest of the story, but there's more story to come.
I'll tell you what, a pleasure. I'm a little embarrassed that it's about me so much, but there's a lot of it is you. And I appreciate your mentorship when we first got into this thing. Is it 50 years ago we started the
At
relationship?
least I was in my early 20s. So I was about
Yeah.
23 and I'm 75. How old
Yeah.
are you?
72.
You look great.
I'm right behind you, buddy.
You're doing a good job. Keep it up. A great smile. Thank you so much.
And likewise, thank you so much.
It was a warm